Film Florida Fridays are interactive conversations about current topics, initiatives, and relationship building in Florida's film, television, commercial, and digital media production industry. Today, we're talking about unions here in Florida. In a moment, our guests will introduce themselves. Then I'm going to ask some questions to get things going. During that time, we're going to ask that everybody keep their microphones on mute to avoid background noise. As always, once we've gotten through the initial questions, we'll open it up to the audience for questions and conversation. At that time, we're going to ask that people use the hand raising function so we can call on you. The goal is for this to be conversational and interactive, but we also don't want everybody talking at the same time. We're also going to ask everybody to keep their questions and comments brief in the interest of time and out of fairness to others who want an opportunity. And please remember, this is not a time to specifically pitch your company or your services. Film Florida Fridays are free, but we hope you'll consider donating $20.23 to our 2023 fundraising campaign. The donation link will be posted in our chat box and throughout the discussion, and you can also find that on our website. With that, I want to introduce our guests. We have Leah Sokolowsky, Chris Ranung, and Michael Viera with us. So let's start there. Michael, give us a bit of your background and your bio.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy Friday. I'm Michael Viera. I'm the Executive Director of the Miami Local for SAG-AFTRA. I'm an entertainment attorney. I've been in the industry for about 12 years. I just got this job in May of 2021, so it's been very interesting to be part of SAG-AFTRA during the pandemic. It's been a very strange environment, but it's also been very challenging and rewarding. So I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Chris, same question to you. Give us your background and tell us a bit about IATSE 477.
Okay, I came into the industry in the mid-90s, found myself, I wanted to find out how they made movies. I found myself an assistant craft service guy on a little movie of the week in Jacksonville, and one day, literally 3 fat guys in cheap suits showed up. They were union thugs, and they organized our show, and I joined the IA that very day. Have always thought it was one of the best decisions in my life and have never looked back since. The IA Local 477 is one of 19 studio mechanics locals in the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. A studio mechanics local, these were created in the mid-1980s to establish dedicated motion picture workforces around the country, as opposed to the 13 Hollywood locals and other locals like in New York City that already had dedicated workforces. So the IA is the union behind entertainment. We have almost 170,000 members in the US and Canada, so we're the largest entertainment union in the world. My local is not as big as it used to be because we don't have incentives, but I still represent about 750 full-time motion picture workers. Everybody except camera, office personnel, hair and makeup, almost everybody else you can shake a stick at is in a studio mechanics local like mine.
Great, thank you for that. And Leah, tell us about your background, and you are a part of both LMGI and the Teamsters. So tell us a little bit about both.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Sokolowsky. I'm a location manager and scout here in the Sunshine State. Been working here for close to 30 years. Grew up, excuse me, in beautiful Palm Beach County. Now I'm a proud resident of Broward, representing Film Lauderdale also. Basically, I've been a Teamster for my entire career. I was very fortunate in that pretty much out of the gate, within my first year of working, I had somebody who was willing to sponsor me. Teamsters here in Florida represent location managers, location scouts, assistant location managers, key assistant location managers, and drivers, a variety of drivers. Throughout the country, though, location managers can be represented sometimes by AA, sometimes by DGA. It just depends on where you are. I joined the Location Managers Guild International because it is a professional organization that is trying to give people a better understanding of what location managers do as a profession. Teamsters are my professional guild, and they help me maintain my professional standards and just kind of make sure that we have a basic contract negotiated here in the state of Florida. LMGI helps us reach out to other organizations, entities inside the film and television industry and outside to increase awareness of what location managers do. So that's the basic difference.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for that. Now let's jump into some of the specific questions. So Chris, you told us what IATSE is, but tell us more about how 477 advocates for its members.
On the state level, because Local 477 represents the entire jurisdiction of the state of Florida, we've moved away from dealing on a Tallahassee level for legislative issues. We're more focused on regional issues, building regional relationships. But the essence of what the local does to advocate for its members are the real meat and potatoes of union work. We administer the contracts in our jurisdiction. Right now, we're looking very closely at how to deal with sub $500,000 production, which is a growing component and kind of a scary component in our state. We're constantly monitoring safety issues. We're always looking at improper classification of the workforce where people are being paid under 1099. That's a chronic problem. These are the things on the ground that a local like mine deals with. Then if you go on the international level, up there with its resources, they can advocate for the entire membership of the IA on such big ticket issues like online piracy and visa requests for foreign workers and protecting the National Endowment of the Arts and just in plain fighting for workers' rights. So, the local has only so far as we can go. The resources pretty much keep us contained in doing the things within the state. But because we're part of such a large organization, we have muscle in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere in North America.
Good. Good. Michael, same question to you. How does the Miami local support its union members?
Yeah, much like Chris, so we deal a lot with contract compliance and also just enforcing our contracts. As an organization, we have so many contracts. We have a contract for every permutation of media out there. And my local deals with claims. So we deal with a lot of complaints and claims from members, and we try to help them out with it. So for instance, with COVID, we had a lot of people who weren't getting paid for COVID tests. So, they would do a lot of claims with our office, and then we would get them paid for the COVID test, things like that. Or if they weren't paid a fitting fee, or if they were paid late, or if they didn't get lunch. It runs the gamut. So we deal with a lot of claims, and we try to get it resolved. And we're kind of a liaison between the member and production. And so we try to bridge that gap so that everyone is happy and they can continue to work. And also, we're very heavily involved in the Spanish language sector of our industry here. We have the Telemundo contract, which is a really big initiative for us. And so we've tried to get in there and really get them to kind of work under a union contract, which has been very challenging because if anyone knows how the Latin industry, it's very different from the American industry in the way that they work. So we've tried to get, things up to par with the American part of the industry. So that's been very challenging and also rewarding, but I think, we're getting there. And so that's how we do a lot of that here in the Miami local.
Okay. And now, Michael, sticking with you, if I'm not mistaken, the Miami local represents Florida, Alabama, and Puerto Rico. Is that right?
Yes. So varied. So yeah, I go from super Latin to like Alabama.
And so how does that reach, I guess pros and cons, like how does it benefit union members and the union as a whole, but also what are the challenges in that?
It's good in the sense that we have one region. And so it's good to kind of, for networking purposes, people are able, the people that live in Puerto Rico, they're able to kind of cross over and work in Florida. Our Alabama is a little bit of a stretch because there's not a lot of work there, but we do have presence there. There are some members and they're very passionate about what they do. But it's good to have those three states because it makes things very for me, very interesting because Puerto Rico has a lot. They're an island. So it's you deal with different challenges when you're working on production on an island. And they do a lot of production. They have Fantasy Island there recently. They have Blue Beetle. So things do happen in Puerto Rico. And we have films that, film in Puerto Rico and projects, and they have, challenges flying people in, getting people out. There's hurricanes in Puerto Rico. And so like, how do you get members out? So we've dealt with productions where they have to get members out immediately. And then where do they come? They come to Florida. And so we're here too. And so we kind of, help them, navigate that too. And so it's been great having, Puerto Rico under our umbrella too, and in Alabama and Florida. I mean, our main focus here is Florida, just because we're such a big state and we have a lot of productions here compared to the two, but they complement each other in ways that I didn't think they would.
Good. Now, Leah, I mean, I know you're a strong believer in the unions. What inspires you to support unions so strongly in this state? Where does that come from?
I think it comes from the belief in good hard work, to be quite honest. I believe the place where unions are strong are advocating for their members. We recently just negotiated a new contract with AMPTP, which is the organization that represents all the large studios that make features and TV, and all their various spin-offs pretty much. Without a strong union, me as Leah Sokolowsky going to negotiate my rates, my terms of employment, I wouldn't even know where to start, quite frankly. There's lots of safety issues that are, put into concern. There were COVID issues. There was the whole management of COVID that me as Leah Sokolowsky, I wouldn't know how to negotiate with these corporations or what to ask for, but my union has people in place that know what those best practices are. And it's not just my union. My union is part of Joint Council 75, which, like Michael, encompasses all of basically the Southeast. And then we're part of a much larger network of Teamsters across the US. So we have all of that strength and power behind us. Without my union representation, there would be things that happen on set that would sometimes be unsafe because of the pace at which we work. Not because anybody is bad, but these contracts, these people, they protect us, they keep us safe, they allow us to earn a decent wage. And quite frankly, they also protect our ability to hopefully retire someday with 401k and pension in place, which as a single worker, I would not be able to negotiate on my own. So I think it's very important when you do this kind of work to have a group that you can, lean on and be with and stand to protect your craft and to protect yourself when you're working in an environment where sometimes the single person can get lost.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, Chris, some new crew members that are just beginning in their career might have misconceptions about how difficult it is to build up their resume in order to get accepted into a union. Are there ways for those who are not yet union eligible to get connected with mentors or someone that can guide them through that process?
This is certainly one of the toughest industries to get started in. I think we all know that. Of course, we don't have hiring halls like stage locals do. Stage locals have a list of members and they have to fill certain calls, a rock show here, a theater show there. We don't have that in our industry. So it's really all about being in the right place at the right time. Who you meet, who you know, who you have worked to get alongside of, who appreciates your skill set and your attitude. I do a lot of speaking at Florida film schools, and we talk about this. And I always stress that aptitude, your skill set, attitude is equally important. If the men and women alongside of whom you are working, even if it's on a small student film or whatever, if those people don't like you, they're not going to call you. So mentorship, as you say, is the bedrock of what we do and how you build your career. Looking for opportunities to work alongside people who really know what they're doing and listening to them, paying attention, working hard and working kind of quietly, showing some deference because you're new. That's how you build a name for yourself. that's when our best boy or our costume supervisor or whomever will say, you know, I worked on this little thing with this young person and she really impressed me and she's going to get a call. We need an additional, she's going to get a call. So building a resume is very important, but people don't hire normally based on resumes. Right. You know, resumes seem to go in the circular file, unfortunately. Still, you want a good resume because that means that you've worked with more and more people, and word of mouth is how you get started in this business. I don't really have a better answer than that. It's a tough hill to climb.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Now, Michael, how have you seen union opportunities shift here in Florida over the last few years?
Shift or go away? Because that's a shift is a euphemism for what's happening to union work in Florida, but I appreciate that. Yeah, the tax incentive that we've spoken about a lot really kind of gutted us in ways that I don't think we expected. But yeah, we union work has gotten less, I guess, more infrequent, I guess. But it's still here. You know, we're still very much, you know, having work down here. It's just harder to find, and it's not as plentiful as it was, you know, 6-7 years ago. Right. You know, recently we had, you know, Bad Monkey shoot here, and they shot here for a very long time. We had Rap Shit shoot here. You know, they were here for a minute too. I think we lost Rap Shit to the California film tax incentive, which is, you know, it's a case study that we could do. Yeah, it's a case study that we could do and show up to Tallahassee. But we had this show here that was a minority-driven show. You know, it had really good optics for us, and we lost it. You know, so union work it's still alive and kicking, just not as much as we would like. But again, it's the state tax incentive that is really the problem. I think if we get the state tax incentive here, you know, we're going to see union work trickle down from Atlanta, where it's migrated. I feel like all our work has gone to Atlanta because they have a very strong, you know, state film tax incentive. But we are trying here. I know, like Sandy Leiderman up in Broward, you know, she has a really good film tax incentive going there. You know, so every, you know, county on their own is trying, but without that state muscle, I don't think we're really going to make, you know, as much of an impact that we would like. Right.
Yeah, no, I understand. Now, Chris, you know, Florida is a right to work state. And for those that may not be aware, to combat the misunderstandings, like I have people say, oh, Florida is a right to work state, so you guys don't have unions, right? And it's like, no, that's not really what it means. So what does it mean to be a right to work state?
Let's take a deep breath, okay? Because this
collectively,
yeah,
as unions, collectively bargain this deep breath.
Yes,
Leah feel free to chime in, but you know, this is always a really difficult topic because there's so much misinformation at play out there. You know, we're the opposite of a closed shop. You can come into a right to work state, and I think there are almost 40 of our American states are right to work, and you don't have to hire union members. I'm going to say flat out that I'm comfortable being in a right to work state because I feel that our members are skills and safety trained to a point that producers want to hire them. That's our ace in the hole. We're the best there are out there, and producers want to bring their projects in on time and on budget. So they turn to us because they know we are the best people to do the job. But simply stated, right to work laws are designed to make corporations more powerful than workers. They're sold as protections of individual freedom, you know, the Great America theme. They're in fact confusing restrictions on our basic rights, on rights that were granted to us in 1935 under the Wagner Act, the right to form a union, to collectively bargain. These right to work laws undermine our right to organize and roll back the gains that we fought so hard to secure, like family supporting wages, safe working conditions, retirement benefits. So ask yourself, you know, why do big corporations and the very wealthy put so much money into the effort to convince people to not join unions, that unions are bad? Why do they do this? The very name right to work is a lie. Let's face it, corporations don't care about your rights. And I got no problem with corporations. They're our employers, but they exist to make as much money as possible. They don't care about your rights at all. The federal government already protects workers' rights to not join a union. Okay, that's protected under the National Labor Relations Board. It always has been. Nobody can force you to join a union in a right-to-work state. But the work laws, these laws go further. They're trying to disincentivize people. They're trying to give misinformation about what unions do. They're really designed to drain unions' treasuries, to take our ability to raise the money that we need to exist, to take that away, to diminish it. The most important thing in our world are the contracts under which we work. Those take time and they take financial resources to negotiate, and it's a never-ending cycle. It's a never-ending cycle. There's always a contract being negotiated by the IA. So right-to-work laws allow people to work in our industry under our contracts, receive all the benefits and protections of our contracts, but not have to participate in paying for the negotiations that create the contracts. To me, these are free riders. These people are the worst. They are the worst. I'll go nose to nose with a free rider any day, because you are enjoying the stuff that we, and I know we have quite a few union people in the audience, we work hard on your behalf. We ask you to pay for a little bit of that. And if you don't pay for it and you step up and take advantage, and we have to go out and represent you as diligently as we represent anybody who is a union member. That's under the law. We have to go out there and fight for you just as hard. And you can't pay? That's what right to work is set up to do. And let's just face it, you know, when you look at the statistics, and they're all out there, and the pros and the cons, and this argument will go on forever, but wages in right to work states are at least 5% lower than in non-right-to-work states. And pensions, let's not forget about, you know, we're all going to get old. I'm already there, all right? You know, I'm taking a pension, and thank God I have it. Unions fight to create pensions. Right-to-work states, there are far fewer pensions available for union workers because they're not as prolific as they are in non-right-to-work states. So you want to work hard, you want to build a great career, you want to retire. Right to work opposes all of that. It really does. And we could go on and on. Leah, Michael, I don't know if you got some more to say, because this is really a bug in my butt. All right.
Chris,
right?
That was a master class in right. I can't even follow that, but I'm going to try. That was a master class in right to work academia there. Yeah, I feel very much aligned with Chris here. I feel right to work is a misnomer. It's a phrase, like a marketing phrase, I feel, that was made to kind of get people to be like, yeah, I have a right to work and I could do whatever I want, which is fine. But I think, and I think this is germane to our industry, because I feel maybe other industries don't feel the impact the way that we do. It's just that our industry is ripe to have people who are exploited so easily. Because it's entertainment, and they see like the veneer of the gloss and the shine, and then once you go past the veneer and you peek behind the curtain, you see like how hard it is, and what it really takes to make it in this industry. And I feel like it's ripe with exploitation. And so I feel as unions, you have to collectively bargain, because there's strength in numbers, and that's the only leverage you really have. Unless in my union we have big celebrities, and that's fine, and they don't really, in the sense, they don't get the full benefit of being part of the union, because they have managers, agents, lawyers, accountants. They have a whole team to protect them, but the everyday working background actor or commercial actor, they don't have those resources to be able to afford a whole team to protect them. So what do they have? They have the union, and that's where we really come in and we shine. That's when we do our best work, when we protect, the working class actor who, doesn't have, a really powerful agent or a really powerful attorney or accountant to follow up with payroll or to see if they've been paid accordingly. That's where we come in, and that's what we do. And I feel people who just take non-union work, I think it's fine if you're trying to break into the industry, because you really have no other way to do it. But in my experience, even as a lawyer, every case that I had, or any difficult time that I had with production, was always on non-union work, because they didn't have the safeguards or the bumpers, and they didn't know really how to run a production. Because I feel like in entertainment, you come across people who, they want to get in the industry and they want to make a, film. They say, I'm going to make a ton of money, but they don't actually know how to execute it. They don't know what it takes to run a production, to actually, have things in place to run it smoothly without any hiccups. And then that's when it comes in. It's an industry that really does need unions, because you need to have those safeguards in place. If not, it might go off the rails and people may get hurt. I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, look what happened on Rust,
Right.
You know, I mean, I hate to use that as an example, and you know, but it's what we have in the media now to really look at and see, look, unions are really important because, you know, this could happen on a set when it's like you're left, you know, unmanned or like completely just to its own devices. So I think unions are really important, and in a right to work state, it's good in the sense that, yeah, you know, you may be able to work non-union work, but I want at a certain point in your career, you kind of have to value yourself and be like, why do I want to keep doing non-union work where you're not getting, I mean, for us, you're not getting residuals, you're not getting pension and health, you're just getting that one-time payment, but you are part of IP, intellectual property, that will continue to generate income and live on. And especially nowadays, you know, you could be part of a project and you might be dubbed into 50 languages and that will be sold across the world, and those license fees will keep on racking up and you will not see a dime of that unless you're part of the union. You know, so I think right to work is a misnomer. And so I always implore people to really look at their options. And I know that, you know, we charge fees and things like that, but it's an investment in yourself. And there comes a point in your career where you have to make an investment in yourself. And it really goes a long way. Because if you're not willing to invest in yourself, I think just get out of the industry. Honestly, it's just kind of, it's a hobby. Okay, it's a hobby, but it's not your career. And I think if you're really serious about being, you know, an actor, part of Teamsters, part of ILC, you got to make an investment in yourself. And it is a personal decision that people have to make. I'm very practical about it. There's people that, you know, to them like, oh, okay, I want to, you know, be on both sides of the pasture, you know, doing union work and non-union work. And I'm like, okay, do that. But you're going to see that your union experience is going to be way different than your non-union experience. And I employ people to do that too. So I'm like, you'll see it. And that's the best marketing tool that I have, is your experience on the union set and non-union set. So yeah, have at it. You know, I tell people to do it. And no, most of the time they tell me, you're right. The union set was better maintained, well run. I had, you know, breaks, I had meals, things like that you wouldn't expect. That is actually like a big deal, because on non-union sets, you may not get that.
I think location managers and scouts, again, are in a unique position because we are actually union for features and TV, higher impact productions. But when it comes to commercials, we are not covered by a union. So while other trades and professions, you know, grip, scaffers, camera people, to SAG talent will be covered on a commercial, we will not. And what I find right to work does is it puts downward pressure on our wages. It puts pressure on producers to undervalue what we do and sometimes put unqualified people into the position in order to save money, which ends up, in the worst cases, wreaking havoc not only on locations, but sometimes it affects the bigger global community of how we have to work and what we have to do to get our permits.
Yeah.
So
no, that makes. Go ahead. Sorry about that, Leah.
No, I just you know, I do believe in everybody's right to be able to work, but I also do believe in professionalism, standards, a base salary for a certain grade of job, and that's what the union, you know, gives to me in general.
Well, I think that was a great response by all three of you. I had a feeling all three of you would have something good to say there, so I wanted to make sure everybody had time there. Leah, I want to stick with you as we go on to the next question, and let's go back a little bit to kind of the COVID era. At the very beginning, there was a lot of challenges in trying to get back on set safely under different restrictions. A lot of those have waned. And now there's actually some pushback saying that there's still too restrictive, some of the COVID guidelines on union sets. Can you talk a little bit about where we're at and where you think it's going? It just kind of in general, where are things from the COVID standpoint?
I think with regards to COVID, a lot is driven by above the line and talent, quite frankly. So I think it depends on how those people, you know, in the top, you know, above the line demarcation of the budget feel about it. That's where it's driven. I do see less and less COVID protocols in place. I believe our back to work agreement has expired, and I don't believe they've successfully negotiated anything to the same extent. I do still, we are still testing in most cases. Again, sometimes not on the non-union commercials, or sometimes you'll test once at the beginning. We are, as a country, you know, moving into our post-COVID era. And I think as an industry, we're embracing that as well. I think everybody kind of realizes for the long term, this is something that we're going to have to deal with. Like the flu. I hate to equate it to that because it's, you know, very different, but similar to something that we haven't conquered, we haven't eradicated COVID. This is something we're going to have to figure out each for ourselves, kind of how to protect ourselves and how we want to proceed. There are still some people that are wearing masks on set. Good for them. There are still people that, even if the company is not testing, will continue to test. Good for them. I think we're just going to see a lot less of centralized COVID things coming from, the studio down, and we're going to see people kind of taking it a little bit more into their own hands of what they're comfortable with. I still mask going into people's houses out of respect. You never know what you're walking into. I still carry my hand sanitizer, but there are people that don't, and they're
Right.
fine. So, I think it's becoming much less organized, and I hate to say settling into normalcy, but settling into normalcy. That's what I think.
Can I jump in for just a second?
Please.
The right to work agreement is still in effect. It's periodically reviewed, and this,
the return to work agreement.
Yeah.
The return to work.
I'm sorry, the return to work.
Yeah.
My brain is still stuck. The return to
It
work.
happens to us internally all the time, like RTW, right to work or return to work. We have that clarification. It's the return to work agreement.
Mind you, the return to work was a signature thing. It was our employers and the unions in the industry coming together in a time of need and coming up with an agreement, which is something we don't ordinarily do. And it put restrictions out there to protect the industry so we could return to work. It was just reviewed and updated, and it's been modified. It's getting a little less strict, but it's still in existence as of the end of January. And I think it's going to go through the process again in early April. And this was a topic of discussion at a big meeting for the IA that I just attended. The producers would love it to go away. We don't want it to go away completely, because COVID or something else could come back. And this mechanism is now in place and can be adjusted and modified in times of duress as opposed to times of when things aren't that bad. But we hope collectively that the return to work agreement in some form will still remain as a platform for the future.
Interesting. Okay. Now, Chris, I want to stick with you. You talked a little bit earlier about, speaking at educational institutions. Do you see, well, I think the answer is yes, but I'm going to ask the question normally. Do you see a gap in education when it comes to the importance of unions? And if so, how do you combat that?
Well, yeah, I do. Absolutely. I mean, I'm, like Leah and Michael, we are representatives of our unions, and I never shut up. When I go to a cocktail party, I love to, somebody says, "Oh, Chris, what do you do?" "I'm a union thug." And I listen to everybody stop. They don't know how to answer that, how to respond to that. And then I explain, I work in organized labor and what it means.
To put a footnote to that, you say union thug and you're like 6'5", so you kind of really are like a very imposing character. So you do kind of look like a union thug.
Just
so it's very appropriate that you say that. I am 5'5", so I am not a union thug. I am
5 foot tall.
Yeah, exactly.
They come in all sizes and shapes.
Yeah.
I'm constantly at film schools, and I'm constantly going wherever asked to speak about what it means that the film industry is a highly organized industry. Why is that? And what does that mean for a young person or somebody coming into the industry? They're going to make a choice. Do I join the IA or the Teamsters or SAG-AFTRA or not? And there's a lot of misunderstanding about organized labor in our country. Let's face it. There are certain television networks and certain television personalities, quote, news personalities, who have nothing good to say about us. And a lot of people listen to those. It's always been that way. But unions are getting more attention. They're gaining in, I don't want to say popularity, but they're growing. The IA has doubled in size over the last 25 years. So that says something. So people are understanding in our industry and across the board the benefits of being a union member. We just need to talk about it. We just need to find avenues to express what we believe in and do it politely and do it aggressively at the same time, and not take any BS. not allow people to spread in misinformation, particularly within my earshot.
Yeah.
But yeah, any time, any place, anyhow you want me to talk, I'm there.
And now, Leah, let's talk challenges, both here in the state of Florida as well as unions in general. What do you think are some of those challenges 2023 and beyond?
Oh, I hate it, but incentives. That's really our biggest stumbling block. When people come here, they tend to love it. But the thing that I always hear, I was just scouting with a creative team last week, and it's like, well, we would love to shoot the whole thing here, but you guys don't have incentives, and it's X amount of dollars more per episode to shoot it there. Mm-hmm. I think our biggest challenge is going to be how do we, without a state incentive, without a strong state incentive, how do we push back on that? Because I don't know that that's necessarily true. Mm-hmm. I know I've always been very proud of my team because we can do it quicker and faster and better. We know how to execute. And I feel like the guys I know on the IA side are the same. And the guys here locally that do, camera, I feel like Florida union crews are some of the most efficient, hardest working crews I know of. So I would think that our biggest challenge in part is going to be, how do we start retelling that story? How do we start combating that propaganda? Yeah. And how do we stay strong during this transition? We've lost a lot of crew. We've lost some infrastructure here in the state due to a lack of incentive. I don't think anybody would deny it. How do we keep those people that are skilled and qualified in those businesses that are running and strong? How do we keep them solvent so that we can continue to fight another day, basically? I feel like that's our biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and dovetailing on that, Leah, that is our biggest challenge, because part of what's going on now is we'll get 4 days of some movie from Georgia, and then next week we'll get 4 days of some movie from Louisiana, and then a couple of weeks later we'll 4 days of 2 or 3 movies from 3 different states. And we have to have the crew to respond to that, and we have to have the equipment that they need. Otherwise the word goes out that Florida doesn't have what it takes. So it's a really tough time for us,
and it's getting harder and harder to, the story is becoming that we don't have the crew here, and I'm constantly advocating against that because I know we do. But people who are coming in for a few days or even a couple of weeks, they've had a team working with them for X amount of months, and they're comfortable with that team. And so a lot of times it's very easy to say, well, you don't have the crew, Florida doesn't have the crew, and then that starts to perpetuate. So fighting those myths that come with a lack of incentive that are tangent to it, it's super important, because we do have a good crew base.
And we have to keep it, we fight to keep it trained.
And we have a ton of people that would love to come back and take that jump back over the border from Atlanta.
And we have such good
6 or 7
programs
of them
here too.
Still strong schools, turning people out. I've got a girl working with me, young lady. Sorry, she's not a girl. That I got from Josh Ellis at Miami-Dade College. Josh has helped us with Film Florida, and Josh and I have stayed in touch. And every once in a while, I'm like, "Come on, Josh, you got your producing track. Who wants to come do locations? Who do you think has it?" Because locations is tough. And he introduced me to this girl, Jessica. She worked with me through the pandemic with LMDI when we were doing Coffee Tuesdays, and she's here. How do we continue to keep people like Jessica here? How do, just like every other industry, how do we fight brain drain? How do we keep this wonderful talent here in the state of Florida? And how do we empower them to tell stories here?
Big subject.
Yeah. another Film Florida Friday, maybe.
No kidding. That probably is it of its own. So we just have a couple more formal questions for the panelists. So if people have specific questions they want to answer, please raise your hand, and I'm going to see those, and then I'll be able to call on each person and bring you down to ask your question. But in the meantime, while people are getting lined up, hopefully, I was going to ask about positives, but I think we hit on a lot of the positives that you mentioned, Leah. I mean, a lot of those things on the second part of your answer was combating that negativity surrounding it. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of positives, coming on our behalf as well. So, Chris, I wanted to ask you on the local and the national to continue to advocate and uplift production workers. What does that look like? What is that, for you?
For me, I mean, there are a couple dozen different levels that I could choose to respond to that. First of all, I want to say what's happening right here today, is a wonderful thing. This is how we advocate. You, Film Florida, have done a great thing by bringing us in today and giving us a chance to speak from our side. And a lot of people are listening, and we need more events like this to spread the word about the importance of our three unions in the motion picture industry. What can be done? I'm going to go back. I think I listened to what Leah was talking about the film schools and everything. The essence of our industry is people want to come into it and they want to be the best they can. They want to build the greatest and most successful and rewarding career they can. Well, when you are working at the IA level, specifically, you are being mentored on the best shows by the best people. That's how you become the best at what you're doing. So that's a message that I hope people can take to heart today and maybe follow through with it a bit with the people they're in contact with. To be the best, you want to work with the best, on the best. And shows under contract, there's nothing under $1 million anymore that's not under contract, IA contract, and SAG-AFTRA and the Teamsters as well. So you're going to be learning next to the best people out there. How do you get that message out there? That's a great message to use in advocating for our industry and for our production workers. And I guess this, how do you get that out there? How do we continue to put that message out there?
Yeah. I mean, and Chris, earlier you said something and it just resonated again. I mean, Film Florida is not a union by no stretch, but the point that you said that people want the benefits of the union but don't want to pay for it. I feel the same way. I mean, it's amazing how many nasty emails and phone calls I get about Film Florida needs to do this and Film Florida should do that. And my first question is, I'm sorry, I don't recognize your name from our member list. Are you a member? Well, no, I don't. I can't afford it, or I don't have time for it, or that's what we have you for. And it's like, oh, okay. So what you want is everything that we should do, but you're not willing to put in any investment for it.
Yeah.
What people don't understand too is these organizations, Film Florida, IA, Teamsters, are tremendously underfunded for outreach and for these things. Their basic, like Teamsters, their basic mission is to negotiate our contract, but we're part of a larger Teamsters union. It isn't just film workers, it's UPS drivers, it's airport mechanics, it's public servants, it's, guards in jails. Like, there's only so much organizations can take on without every person giving a little piece of the elephant, and that little piece of the elephant can translate into $25, right? Or what is it, 23, John?
Yeah, 2023 is the donation thing, and individual members are $75, and look, you get a t-shirt.
And quite honestly, if it's if it's something you believe in, it's a small price to pay for a little bit of assistance on something. We always, I feel like we as a country, as a community, tend to always think there's somebody out there that should be doing, but we don't really do the digging we don't really do the research and the digging to see what that organization is and what it needs and how we can assist. And if everybody could just do a little digging, try to figure out what it is that you need and try to assist in just in a small way, could be writing a letter, could be making a phone call, could be donating $23. I think we'd all be better served.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing what you get somebody should, or you all should. It's like, who is the somebody? I'm looking for this big army of somebodies. Like we are the somebody. Yeah.
You are the somebody. You are the army, John.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, then we may be in trouble if I am the army. So
no, we're in good hands. We're in good hands.
Okay, so again, questions. Anybody have anything? Michael, I'm going to ask you one that I saw kind of floating in there. Talk about.
Oh, I've seen so many SAG-related questions. I'm so excited to answer the avalanche.
Michael.
I know there's always it's fine. It's fine.
Michael, talk about the SAG talent agreements and whether or not the talent agents in Florida use them, don't use them, partially use them. Talk about that as a subject overall.
So as a disclaimer, I am not part of the professional representatives department. So this is not my area of expertise, to be honest. I will tell you what I know as a lawyer in my legal career. And also like what I know, what we do here in SAG. We do tell all the agents to use our contracts. However, it's not a perfect system. And we know how things are run here in Florida, that people, it's kind of like the wild, wild west, even though we are in the South. And sometimes, people kind of get off the rails a little bit, and it's up to us to put them back on. I will say that and also, as you probably all know, in this industry, people are always very reticent to report anything because they're afraid of being blacklisted. And so I've always offered to my members that I will try to help you as much as I can on a confidential basis, but there comes a point where eventually you have to let the cat out of the bag if you really want to make a difference. And I find people are very hesitant to do that. And people will say, oh, this agent is doing this. But it's kind of like if you are playing Clue and you're a police officer and you're like, someone's committing a crime. You're like, but what? Who? What? And no one tells you anything. So you kind of need to have someone kind of be like martyr. And unfortunately, people do not want to do that. And so I try to do the best that I can with what I got. You get what you get, you don't get upset. So that's what I always say. But I've had members reach out to me personally, and they'll tell me, I've been seeing things in the chat about double dipping and things like that. And that's probably one of the more egregious things that agents do, here in Florida, and actors, they don't know any better. And sometimes they do it because they're like, what, that's the only option that I have. They say, this is my agent, and if they want to double dip, that's the role that I want, I'm going to do it. But, I think education is really powerful, and you have to educate your members and, actors. And I do it for people who are part of the union and not, because as a lawyer, that's what I've always done. I've always tried to give people, what is what, and this is what you have to do. And I'm very practical. And I say, look, it's strategic. Like if you have leverage, you could push this way. If you have none, you're going to have to do it this way. Your first job is never your best job. And as you grow, you'll get more leverage and things will get better. But I always tell people, don't take double dipping. Under the SAG-AFTRA contract is 10%, and that's what it is. Sometimes people do backdoor deals with the production directly, and they get another 10%. But if you report that, then we'll go and we'll step in. It's just if we don't know about it, then we don't know about it.
Right.
But and then also when people aren't part of the franchise, they charge. In Florida, the standard that I've always seen for managers in TV, film, music, and music is especially erratic. If you guys think film and television is bad, get into music. Oh my God, that is insanity. I used to work for Pitbull, and I will not work in music anymore. And I learned a lot, and it was great. I have to say that, but I will tell you, oh my God, it was insane. 20% off of gross. They did not care about sound and lights. If they paid an agent, it was crazy. So then the artist at that point was making nothing. And I think it's about educating members and people, and they have to know their business. And I think that's why, entertainment is seen as being something really frivolous. And I think it's something that people will say, oh, it's fun. And I'm like, no, it actually there's a science to it. And you have to have really high business acumen, and you have to know what you're doing. It's a numbers game. If you're not good at doing that, then you're not going to be successful in this business. It is a business. As a lawyer, I had to know a potpourri of different things. I had to know a little bit about employment law. I had to know about corporate law. I had to know the actual entertainment contracts. I had to know, a little bit about everything, because it's just when you are in this industry, you just have to be educated. There's no ifs, or pay someone who is. If you could afford to do that, build a team to do it. But I've always found that it's important to empower members and people and say, hey, you could actually make a difference yourself, just what we were all talking about. If members are feeling that agents are double dipping, please call me and contact me. But I'm gonna tell you what it is, and it may not be able to be confidential, unfortunately, because that's just the nature of the game.
Right.
And you're gonna have to reveal who you are, and then maybe you will be blacklisted. And I tell people that is very much a possibility, because you gotta be realistic about things. I don't sell dreams. I sell, what the reality of the situation is. And it's not a perfect science. It isn't, there are pros and cons about joining the union. And I think we have to be upfront about that. I don't try to be opaque about anything like that, because then you get really angry members like, oh, you made me join, you didn't tell me this.
Yeah.
And I'm very transparent. I always tell people, look, this is the sacrifices that you're giving up, but these are the rewards. And I think it's a personal decision that you have to see if you are at the point of your career where you could afford to sacrifice that for a reward. And I'm very upfront about that.
Good. Okay, so we got a couple questions from the audience. So I'm gonna, Juliana, if you wanna turn on your camera, I can pull you down and spotlight you so everybody can see. Otherwise, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello. Hi. How's everybody doing? I am a senior at FSU Film School, and as someone that went to film school, I'm really shocked because I grew up in Broward County, and I'm really shocked by how they always tell us, "Are you going to move to LA, Georgia, New York?" And I'm always thinking, what about Miami? What about the film industry here? And they never tell you about that, even though half of the school comes from Florida. So I want to learn more about that here, as you guys mentioned, and I was wondering what the benefits of, because we talk tax incentives, but what are the good things about working in Florida? Thank you.
Chris, Leah, which one you want to take?
I'll jump. What school are you at, Juliana?
FSU.
FSU, and I used to come and speak there, and I'm in touch with Brenda and Dean Reddick, and trying to get back up there to speak with. It's such a magnificent school. I need to be there. Your question is what specifically?
I was wondering more about the benefits of being a filmmaker in Florida rather than in California or in New York.
Well, Florida is a great place to live. Okay, so that's the benefit.
No state income tax.
No state income tax. But yeah, I mean, the benefit used to be that we made a lot of movies here and a lot of TV shows. And because of incentives, the lack of incentives, that's gone away. The benefit of being here still, and I firmly believe this, is that we have a highly creative energy in Florida, in the arts, in all the arts, and very specifically in the motion picture and the visual arts. I'm doing work on certain levels to try to tap into that, nurture it, and help it grow, because that energy wants to stay here, just like you do. Yeah. So that's the answer to your question. We don't have work. We're trying to find ways to bring work. In the meantime, let's grow our creative energy. Let's make ourselves attractive to the industry to come here. I know Sandy Leiterman. I know Leah has been involved in this in South Florida. Sandy has, I forget what the event was, but I mean, there are things that are happening in Miami and in Broward County that can't happen anyplace else in the country. We have a melting pot of, incredible different cultural melting pot here. And with that, in that melting pot, you have all these incredible creators. So if we are known as a place where creativity happens, where there is where there are creators, and if we're known of having people like yourself coming out of the preeminent film schools in the world, and if we're known for having the equipment and the crew and the people at the production level, the producers, we can find ways to attract significant production back to Florida in the absence of incentives. And that's kind of what I'm working on foremost. But there's no easy answer. How do we get people here? We got to give them something they want and something they can say to the bean counters, I don't care. I'm going to go to Florida to make my show. It kind of happened with Rap Shit, right, Leah? I mean, that was kind of the ethos behind it. There are a couple of shows that have come in. We don't care. We are going to make it in Florida because that's the feeling we want. That's the place we want to be. I think even Marcel had that a little bit too.
Yeah. If I can add to that a little bit, Juliana, I think, especially coming from South Florida, you know the unique fabric that exists here. People that tend to come from other places tell our stories differently. And as a young content creator, I think there is a tremendous opportunity to show authentic, genuine Florida stories like other people cannot, with support from your community. I think that the communities, especially here, I can speak to South Florida because I live and work here, are ripe, for young people to come in and show people what we're really all about. Look at the success of Moonlight. That was not an intrinsically South Florida story, but oh my God, our backdrop made it so powerful and so beautiful that, it became an Oscar winner. I think you have that capacity here. Unlike if you go to an LA or a New York, I think you're a much smaller fish in a much larger pond, and you don't have people who would so be in tune to helping you create a truly intrinsic Florida story. And I think you can get that here. And you have to be hooked into groups like Film Florida that can help you, introduce you to people. You have to be hooked into, local film commissions where you hope to base and be. You have to start knowing the nonprofits in your area, the places where you can reach out to hopefully get money to, get little things. I don't know if you have a thesis project during your senior year, if you've done something, putting your reel together. You've got to approach it like a business. You've got to have a plan. You've got to work it every day. But I think there is a payoff. It's harder. I'm going to tell you it's going to be harder, especially to get that first job. You're going to have some fortitude. And you've really got to treat it like Michael said, like Chris has said, it's a business and you've got to treat it. But I think there is untapped potential here. We have so many stories, so much interesting fodder that I think only truly people from the state can truly understand and treat appropriately and not make us a caricature. So I hope you stay.
Great answers, Chris and Leah, and thanks for the question, Juliana. Alec, I'm going to bring you down and go ahead and ask your question.
All right, hi there, everyone. I'm Alec Wilkowski. I work for the Florida AFL-CIO, which if folks don't know, it's kind of the union of unions. So film workers, nurses, public school teachers, that sort of thing. And we've had success at the local level. I know y'all talked about the film incentive legislatively at the statewide level. Joe Ruiz-Torres has joined our Central Labor Council, and she did a great job educating me on that. But given that we've had success more at the municipal and county level passing legislation, I'm in St. Petersburg, I work in Tampa as well. We passed an apprenticeship ordinance that helps get union construction workers on the job. We've developed relationships with city council members and county commissioners. I'm just wondering if there's a model of ordinances at particularly the municipal level that have been applied in order to just help film workers, especially if film unions can kind of take the lead on that as well. Are there any models out there for, I don't know, a local incentive or something like that that would benefit film workers? Thank you.
I don't know about models. I do know that the local film incentive effort is vibrant and growing. Accolades to several film commissioners and their commissions around the state. I feel that is the most viable route to take, because I still maintain, as I always have over the last 6 years, there's no hope in Tallahassee, and I applaud John and everything you guys are doing up there, John Lux. But knowing our leadership, I don't think we're going to go anyplace. So what's happening in Broward and Miami-Dade and Hillsborough and in Pinellas and in Palm Beach, in other counties is where it's at. On a one-to-one basis, I'm building relationships with different county commissioners because we need their help. And Alec, I'm going to reach out to you if you want to send me your contact info or something, because I'm always over in the Tampa, St. Pete area, because that is an area that has problematic production, but it also has a very open-minded legislative level, county legislative level. So we can do a lot of work together there. And I'd like to reach out to you and put our heads together. All right. Okay, I got it.
Excellent. Thanks, Alec, and thanks, Chris, for the answer. Earl, I'm gonna bring you down. Well, you don't have your camera on. Earl, can you turn your camera on, or otherwise just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question?
Hey, good morning. No, I'm in the vehicle, so I won't.
Okay.
But anyway,
Try
good
safe.
morning. Thanks for doing this. And I'm a longtime IA member, over 30 years, proud member. And Chris, when you opened up the Zoom, you mentioned something very briefly about 1099 work and why it's illegal classification. Can you expound on that a little bit? Because it seems that we have a ton of that in Florida, and production companies don't seem to realize that or maybe they do, but I think most of them are naive as to why that is illegal classification of a worker.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up.
I'll mute myself again.
Okay, no, I'm glad you brought it up, Earl, because it's a chronic problem. And you know, in our world, particularly in very low budget motion picture production and definitely in commercial production, employers have a tendency to classify people and as independent
contractors
and pay them with a 1099, which is illegal unless you actually are, you own a corporation and you have the ability through that corporation to pay your fair share of your federal taxes and Social Security and you name it, all the taxes that we pay. So if you're being paid under a 1099, that's wrong. We try to fight that, but it falls on deaf ears. Maybe it's because it's not a big enough problem in Tallahassee's purview. It's only a handful of film workers here or there, so who cares? But what's happening is two things, and I'm going to go to the more important one maybe first. When you are a film worker and you're working under a 1099 and you've been classified as an independent contractor and you really are not, if you trip over a cable and shatter your ankle, you're not covered. You're not covered by workers' comp because nobody's paying into it. And you're not covered by your own insurance because you're on a workplace. You're on a work site. So you are up the proverbial Schitt's Creek, accolades to a great TV show. That is wrong. And why the state government, and I admit in the last couple of years, I haven't been as aggressive as we were previously, we need to go back at them and say, you need to fix this. It's wrong. There are payroll companies that can adapt very easily to ultra low budget production, but these producers are choosing not to spend the few more dollars to protect their workers. They're choosing to put people in harm's way. It's very bad. And I noticed earlier, somebody asked about why don't your unions engage in more real education about what unions actually do for individuals and for society. This is part of that answer. Whoever that person is, you got an idea for me to come and talk? I'll come and talk, and I'll talk about 1099s and the jeopardy that it puts young, just graduated film students in to be out on a set where they're not protected. This is something people don't know about, they don't think about, they're not aware of. And
it's not even just young film students.
I know.
Many of our fellow crew members don't understand, they like the extra cash and they don't understand what a 1099 act. They don't understand that they are taking quite literally their lives into their own hands.
Yeah, kudos to Earl for asking this question. This is a great question. I think it's because I think it's a particular phenomenon in non-union work too. And I think to break it down for you, just at least from my experience on a practical level, it's usually because the employer or the person paying doesn't want to hire a payroll company, gets an added cost, and also just because they don't have the business acumen to do it and take out taxes and take out, what you're required to do. And I think that's what it really is at a practical level. They just don't want to do the work because it's another added hurdle that they have to conquer in order to make people an employee. And so from a legal perspective, it's a 7-factor test that they look at whether you're an independent contractor or you're an employee. And it's all about control. It's about the control that the employer exercises over you. And so I think, again, it's about education. So, people know that it's a test that you have to kind of, pass. And you got to analyze things from a more analytical level in terms of whether you are actually an independent contractor or whether you are an employee. Then I think people will start to come around like, oh, these are actual employees. But again, people have to speak up. And that's what we do as a union. As a union, we say, hey, these people are not independent contractors. They are employees. Like you've exercised this amount of control that makes them an employee. They can't leave. They can't just walk out. They're using your equipment. They're using your things. They're on your time.
They're
so you're an
telling you what
employee,
time to be
what
there.
to do. Yeah, when you could leave, when you have to come, so you're an employee. And so I think it's just people need to, stand up for themselves and say, I'm an employee, I'm not an independent contractor. And what they try to get you is like, oh, but do you want to be paid off in gross? Because you'll get more money in your pocket. It's like, hey, you actually have to pay those taxes at the end of the year. So unless you're very, disciplined and you're saving money and putting money away on a separate account, so you don't commingle your funds, you're going to owe money at the end of the year. And it's a very, really bad situation to be in when you can't pay your taxes and you get penalties and things like that. So people have to really plan for those things when you are a 1099. It's just when you're an employee, you don't, because those things are already handled for you.
All right, thanks, Earl. That was great. I'm glad we had that discussion. I'm just being mindful of our time here. We're about an hour and 10 minutes into our window. We got 2 more questions from the audience, and then I'm going to do one more kind of round robin with our panelists here. So Bianca, I'm going to pull you down and spotlight you so people can see, and go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bianca. Nice to meet y'all. So my question here is, I'm a college student myself. I'm currently in my senior year. I will be graduating this year in December. And
congrats.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So overall, my question would be here for myself and for my classmates as well that I'm in class with in film school here at UCF in Orlando, is basically, do you guys see a possibility in the near future for all of the film productions from like Atlanta, LA, coming down to Florida and, filming more here in Florida, again, with the, incentives and all of that, just so that we can avoid of having like recent graduates having to figure out whether they want to move to another state in order to start working and kind of, avoid having to move somewhere else to start their career and stay in Florida in home, because there's so much potential here and there's so much talent and creativity. And I feel like it's so broad that, it's really a shame to like have people as they graduate, move to other states and then, have that talent just kind of giving away our talent to other states,
So Bianca, let me jump in there and answer, and then I'll let everybody else. So what you're describing is one of the main talking points that we have when we speak about the incentive issue, is that we are educating the workforce of other states, and that's not good for Florida, and we don't want that. And so we're going to continue to use that messaging. Do we see more projects coming here with or without a state incentive program? The goal for all of us here is to bring as much work as we possibly can to the state. Nobody's going to argue that it wouldn't be easier if we had a statewide program, but we don't right now, and that's just a fact. And so what I think everybody has said is this is why we fight every day to continue to bring as many jobs and as much opportunity we have for both the workers that are already here, as well as folks like you that are going to be graduating shortly. If you're asking my opinion, do I think we're going to have a statewide incentive? Yes, but I don't know when. If I knew that, I promise I'd tell you. But I think, look, Film Florida continues to do the work in Tallahassee, and it's an army that's doing that work to try and get there. And every time that I personally want to just say screw it and move on and say it's not happening, our membership tells us that we need to keep fighting. And so we as an organization work as a group. And if the membership says keep fighting, then we're going to keep fighting. I do think we'll get there. I don't know exactly when. But the goal every day, with or without state help, is to bring more projects here and more jobs. And that's why there are so many local incentives here now, because all of those local areas, which, by the way, are all Film Florida members, are working with or without the state to bring as many projects here on a local level. And so we're going to continue to fight. I don't begrudge people that leave. I hope more people stay, and because I think we have a lot to offer here in the state, and I think we can be successful with or without the state. So that's my soapbox. Anybody else want to say anything?
I do.
Yeah.
Also, Bianca, just to, oh, sorry, Leah, if you want to go.
Go ahead.
Oh, just Bianca, just to like empower you, what you could do just for you right now, like reach out to local leadership, reach out to Congress people, reach out to, you know, the mayor, reach out to everyone that you could possibly reach out to, you know, in the political spectrum, and tell them, hey, I want the film tax incentives. So that's how they gauge what is important to the constituents. You know, so you yourself could just reach out to people locally and be like, hey, you know, we should do this, we should have this. Reach out to senators, reach out to everyone that you could possibly do, because the loudest voice is the one that gets heard. It's like in Spanish they say, "Perro que no ladra no mama." You know what I mean? So you have to bark, 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 bark. So that's what you got to do.
Bianca, go to our website, filmflorida.org. There's an email address on there that will come eventually to me, and reach out to me, and I'll tell you the people you need to send emails to and ask them to support the bills that are currently up in the state legislature. Leah, you had something.
Yeah, I just, do you know what you want to do, Bianca? Like, do you know what department you want to be in? What is your goal? What kinds of projects do you want to work on?
Yes, so I basically want to be really involved in production, because I would like to be a producer and director as well, because the more the merrier. Mm-hmm. And I also act, so I don't want to leave my acting career on the side either. I want to incorporate that as well. Mm-hmm. And possibly, you know, as I'm working along future projects, be able to participate in them as well as a talent myself. And
so my experience, I went to the University of Texas Film School, and I came back here because I had grown up here. And it was shortly after Miami Vice had wrapped, and I decided I was going to try to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And that's now jettisoned to a 30+ year career of doing what I'm doing. So what you have to decide is, you know, how do you want to reach your goals? I'm going to tell you that if you're going to be in production or locations, being here in Florida is great, because you're typically one of the first people on and one of the last people off, even on a 2-week project that can turn into anywhere from 2 to 6 months of work, depending on the size and scope. You also in Central Florida have a tremendous amount of Central Florida-based production companies that specialize in local content and commercial production, and getting in with one of them can give you a quick and easy heads up on how to produce. I don't think you can get those same kinds of opportunities as easily by going to larger areas, because you're competing with everybody coming from everywhere else in the world. Here you have something special. You are from here and you know people here. And hopefully you have people that you can lean on that can help you while you're knocking on doors and making phone calls. And again, treat this like a business. You can't just send a resume and think somebody's going to call you back. It's not going to happen. You got to try and follow up with a phone call, and you got to be persistent, and you got to do it every single day. Even if you've got to get another job to get you by for a little while. I opened up the Cheesecake Factory in the Grove, right? And just as we were about to open the store, then I got my first job that, you know, started me off, and I haven't looked back ever since. But I was treating it like a business every single day. There will be ups, there will be downs. Our industry is cyclical, but the payoff, I think, for you would be worth considering staying here. But you've got to kind of put your list together, your little SWOT analysis, right? And decide what's best for you. I am a full believer that you can have an amazing full career, long career doing just film and television production here in this state. And I will continue to preach it and try to help young people who want to stay.
Yes, and that's the long-term goal, because I like Florida. I want to stay here in Florida because this is my home, essentially. I don't want to move anywhere else.
Yeah, like, you want to work where you live instead of live where you work. Like, exactly. You have a life, you have a family. That's why I stayed. It was worth it. It's a fight, but it was worth it.
And it's not impossible. They told me the same thing as an entertainment lawyer. They
were
like, "Oh, you can't be an entertainment lawyer in Miami, Florida." And I'm a Sokolowsky. I've only lived in Miami, Florida, and I'm an entertainment lawyer in Miami, Florida. So you can't do it. You have to be very tenacious, and you have to just be very, very, very tenacious and hardworking. But look at Leah. Leah, you outlasted the Cheesecake Factory in the Grove. That's gone, but you're still here. You know what I mean? So
right?
Yeah, exactly. I used to go to that Cheesecake Factory, and I was heartbroken when they closed. But then they came to the Gable, and I'm fine. But you could do it, Bianca. You work hard, and you'll get what you want. just have to work hard.
All right, Bianca, thank you very much for the question. All right, one quick question for Chris, and then we're going to go around real fast. Chris, you mentioned earlier that you're trying to do some other things besides, rely on the state for an incentive. Do you want to talk about your endeavor at all? You're on mute. Chris, you're on mute.
Chris, you're on mute.
I'd love to talk about it, but and I can talk all day, but many of you know that I've been involved for a long time in trying to bring moderate budget independent feature film production back to Florida by using a financing mechanism that we developed, dating back about 5 or 6 years ago when I was still going up to Tallahassee as an alternative to incentives. It keeps metamorphosing. I am supposed to be in a big meeting tomorrow where we might be able to make some announcements, but it's still kind of hush-hush. We're turning back to the nonprofit model, and somebody mentioned nonprofits earlier, and I think that's a world all of us need to be aware of because there's a lot of opportunity for creatives out there. But what we're trying to do is, bring those $4 million to $10 million projects that are getting their asses kicked in Georgia and other states where it's so expensive to shoot, give them some reason, an attraction, a financial reason to come to Florida and shoot here. Part of what I like about the model is because these will all be the types of projects that will be under union contract, but they also will provide very good opening opportunities for people like Bianca and others, young people coming into the industry, because by the nature of their budgets, they will be hiring locally. They won't be bringing people in from LA that much. It's Feature Florida Partnerships, and I'm going to look for an opportunity to speak to people about it soon. Maybe I'll have my own Film Florida Friday.
I was just going to say, when you are ready, you let us know, and we will do one of these just to focus on that one thing. Okay, Teresa, I know you had your hand up earlier, and then you put it down, and now you're back up. So I'm going to pull you down so you can ask your question, and then we'll wrap things up.
Thank you.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Chris. How are you? I'm Teresa Corey. I'm the Central Region Director for the International Cinematographers Guild. We represent all of the camera people working on union projects. And I wanted to just, reiterate what Chris just said. We really want to see work come back to Florida. I think it's really important. We still have members who own property there, who literally have second homes in Georgia to be able to take care of their families. We want to get those families back together again. And I want to bring in the right to work issue that someone else had brought up before, and the fact that when projects are covered by union contracts, regardless of where they're shot, but especially in a right to work state, there's a misnomer, there's a misunderstanding, even with producers, that right to work means I can just hire whoever I want, treat them however I want to, and it doesn't matter. And it's not the case. When we have a union contract in a right to work state, we jump in and we make sure every person working, union or not, gets the same protections under our collective bargaining agreements, the same wages, working conditions, terms and conditions. They even get benefit contributions submitted to the Motion Picture Industry Plan. And this helps those people who aren't union members to be able to see firsthand what their protections are. And that we do enable them to get health care, to get retirement through our unions. And that's an issue within the non-union production cycle, if you would, where there's no thought to the individual's needs. We all should have retirement. We all should have medical coverage. And this affords that when you have a union representative person, right? You get to have those benefits that every worker should have. And as the employer, they should be obligated to provide that to you. But in the freelance industry, non-union projects, it's cheaper for them not to provide you that as a benefit. So if you're primarily working on non-union projects, you're not getting those benefits. So kind of touch base on the right to work. What's the benefit of a union at the same time? I just wanted to point that out. And we're working hard to work with you guys as well.
I appreciate Teresa. I'm glad you re-raised your hand so we could get you on here. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so last thing for everybody, I want to go around and Leah, Michael, and Chris, tell people where they can find out more about each of the unions that you guys represent and are a part of. So if people want more information, where should they go? Leah, you go first.
You know, the easiest way for us is probably honestly calling our union hall. 769, the number's 305-642-6255. You know, you could email me. My email is leahasoko@gmail.com. And I can put you in touch with our business agent, depending on what your interest is, in, you know, becoming a Teamster or, you know, finding out more information about Teamsters. Yeah, reaching out to somebody that you know that's a Teamster, whether it be a driver or a location manager, is also a really good way to find out more about your union. You know, just ask, hey, why are you union? How does it affect you? That's really the most effective. Yeah.
Teresa, I'm glad you put that website in the chat. And Leah, while the other Michael and Chris are, can you go in the chat and put the phone number you gave and your email address as well? Okay, Michael, you're up next.
Yes, we have a website. It's www.sagafra.org. It is currently getting a facelift, which is appropriate considering as actors. It's getting remodeled and everything. It's getting recalibrated, and so hopefully the website, we've had a lot of feedback about the website that it's not very easy to navigate, but we're working on that. So there's a lot of information there. You can reach out to me directly. My email is michael.viera@sagafra.org.
All right. And then Chris, how can people find you?
Yeah, we have a website, and hang on a second. I'm going to put it up here on chat. You know, number one, call me. All right, just call me. You can, there's my phone number. That's my personal phone number, my personal email. Like I said, I'm always ready to talk. You can also go to iatse.net, which is the International's website, to give you the full scope of what happens in the IA. You know, everything going on in Canada, all the way from Canada to Puerto Rico to Guam. We cover it all. But really, you know, give me a call. If you have questions, I'll be happy to talk. And if you have a place for me to go and talk, I'll be happy to go. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. All right. So everybody, I appreciate everybody sticking with us through almost an hour and a half of this. That wraps up another edition of Film Florida Friday. Thanks to Chris, Leah, and Michael for being with us. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. We'll be back next month, as I mentioned, on March 10th with another edition of Film Florida Friday. Be on the lookout for that registration on social media and email blast. I did put it in the chat box as well. I want to thank all of our Film Florida members for their continued support. If you're not a member of Film Florida, we hope you'll consider joining the organization. Go to filmflorida.org. You get one of these nice brand new t-shirts if you join or renew in 2023. If you've enjoyed Film Florida Fridays, as I mentioned, please consider donating $20.23 to our fundraising campaign. You'll find that link in the chat box and on our website as well. Don't forget about the Film Florida podcast, which is on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and a couple others. Keep up with everything we're doing on our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And thanks again for being here. Stay safe and healthy, everybody.
Thank you,
everyone.
Good.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.